And we are live. Hello and welcome back to another session of Stormwater School. I'm once again joined by on all things Stormwater Management, Lisa. Lisa, how are you doing?
Very well, Callum. Thanks. How are you? It's been a little while.
Yes, it has. It has been. I think you missed the last one. We had Danielle on, but obviously we missed you greatly and miss your wealth of knowledge. And you're back for
Oh,
this one. Oh, sorry.
she done a fantastic job, but I'm back.
She did do very well, yeah. For her first time, she did do very well. But we have Lisa back. And how was your bank holiday weekend?
Really, really nice. It's always nice to have an extra day. I spent a lot of time with the family and, watched a lot of TV and caught up with things. Very relaxing. What about yours?
Well, we did talk about this briefly off air, I watched in total 11 football matches across the bank holiday weekend, all the while promote on my Football Manager save, promoting Swindon Town from League 2 all the way up to League 1. I was started in the 21st space when they had place in the League 2. They were struggling, brought a new manager in, new mindset, new tactics, drilled the players, and we got automatic promotion place on the final day of the season. That's really wonderful. And I didn't realize how stressful it could be then sorting out my pre-season, ready for the next season to try and help us stay up, because they want me to battle relegation fiercely, the board.
I can tell how immensely proud you are of this, probably more so than anything else you've done.
It's one of my top 5 achievements of all time. I then had to sell my best centre back, who got me kind of brought in funds to then reinvest in the team. And I'm, quietly confident we can do well this season. We're already undefeated start to the league. Beat Oxford United in the local derby. So all things are going well so far.
Just shows you're living our company values even out with work. Don't know if the viewers can see it behind me. You're constantly improving, finding a way. Yeah, exactly. Out with work and in work.
Exactly. Oh, it was so. I can see why it's so fun, but it's so stressing on how to figure it all out. But no, tough season ahead. But anyway, it's enough about that, and enough because I'm sure people are probably turning off now because they're hearing me waffle too much about Football Manager. But we'll get started with today's Stormwater School session, and our main topic of today is all about what are sustainable sustainable drainage systems, otherwise known as SuDS, and that's usually the term you'll hear about when it comes to talking about stormwater management systems. So Lisa, with your wealth of knowledge, take away, what are sustainable drainage systems?
It is really such a massive field. I mean, in a nutshell, it's a way to mimic the natural rainwater cycles when you develop, to reduce the impact environmentally on developments where possible. Natural rainwater cycles include lots of small events, small storm events. Obviously, tanks are designed for these massive 1 in 100 years or 1 in 300 years events we've discussed in previous sessions, but majority of rainfall events are small, frequent rainfall events, and these actually have the most detrimental impact on nature. So SuDS is a way to try and design a drainage system to mimic these natural events, and it kind of has 4 main components. So SuDS, there's 4 kind of pillars of sustainable urban drainage systems. So the first one is water quantity, which is the kind of obvious one, which is managing the quantity of water that runs off to make sure it doesn't cause flooding or problems. So water quantity. Water quality is the next kind of pillar of SuDS, which is saying that what we return back to the systems is not going to damage the system. So it's making sure that as we've kind of mentioned before as well, when water's falling on urban environments, it's picking up potential pollutants, which wouldn't have happened if it was falling onto a greenfield site. So it's to manage the quality of the water that's going through the system, so it's not having an adverse effect. There is amenity, is the third pillar of SuDS. And amenity is a way to create better spaces for people, essentially, is how it's worded in the SuDS manual, to make sure that what you're doing has a positive impact on those who are going to be living and working in the community. And finally, biodiversity is the final pillar of SuDS, which is to make sure that what you do benefits plant life, creatures, animals, and everything living in the area. So it really, the basics, in a one sentence, SuDS is a way to make sure that your development does not have a negative impact on water quality, and to mimic the cycles as they would have been if your development wasn't there. but it is such a massive topic. I mean, there's something called the SuDS manual, which is like bigger than, it's like 2 phone books almost. It's a massive manual with all these guidelines and regulations. It also gets very complicated because the guidelines and regulations vary across the 4 countries of the UK. SuDS manual is guidance, it's not law, but certain parts of it are law in the 4 different countries, and other parts of it are guidance, but obviously a good SuDS system to try to encompass as much of it as possible. And attenuation tanks form part of SuDS. They're kind of a common misconception that if you put an attenuation tank in, you've put SuDS in, but it's not, it's only one component. A good SuDS system comprises of lots and lots of different components. So quite often it's a few different attenuation or channels or drains in succession to mimic these natural ways of dealing with water. So it can comprise of swales and ponds with an attenuation tank, or channels and wetlands, these kind of things. Rain gardens, which is another great example of amenity and biodiversity, as you see kind of rain gardens and things on roofs, and tree pits and things on like streets, all form part of SuDS. So it's a very complex topic, but hopefully I've given it a kind of layman's explanation there, so people would understand what SuDS is.
Yeah, because like you said there, I mean, maybe I think I'm probably guilty of it as well, is when it comes to SuDS, it is mainly thinking about just an attenuation tank, and that's it. It's basically dealing with kind of the excess surface water that's coming in during these periods of a high fall of stormwater in the local area. And like you say, it's from the sounds of it, with the 4 pillars, an attenuation tank is just one of the quantity, whereas there's, like you say, quality, biodiversity, and amenity that can cover all sorts of things. So when it comes to a project, it's a lot more to think about than just, okay, where does the stormwater go? And it's then having to potentially treat it and, like I say, naturally mimic it, so there's less harm on the local environment during these storm events.
Yeah, I mean, there is something called the SuDS train, which I'm going to go as I can't remember the exact sequence of it without looking it up, but there is something called the SuDS train, which is the order in which you should manage the water. So first kind of bit on the SuDS train is interception, which is obviously gathering the water, and then reuse is the next. So reuse could be for things like a rainwater harvesting system, which GAF also do. Reuse for, if you put in things like rain gardens and wetlands, would be reusing it as watering for plants and things naturally by having these components in your system. Naturally use water. So the first kind of element on the train is to try and reuse as much of the water as possible to reduce the stress on systems down below. And as it would happen if you hadn't built on the site, that water would naturally be reused by the plants and everything the plants and animals that were there. And then you go down the SuDS train, and that's when it comes on to things like returning it back to groundwater, and infiltration is kind of swales, things like that come further down on the SuDS train, and kind of storage and release back into the system is very low on the train. It's kind of, you should try everything you can first to reduce the amount of water there, use it, return it back to its natural state, and kind of at the bottom of the train, once you've taken away as much of the water as you can through these other methods, what's left is what really goes to the attenuation tank, which we provide, and is released further down through a flow control system. So the system should be designed to follow this train where possible, which I'm sure we could provide. If anyone wants to email us and ask for it, we can certainly give that for you, but it's quite a big document, so I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Perfect. No, I think that's a very good explanation, a very good kind of went into quite a bit of detail as to what SuDS are. And I think from the sounds of it, it could be Alice falling down a rabbit hole and finding and all sorts of maze when you go into SuDS, it can be, but I think with the right guidance and, the know-how, it can make it a whole lot easier to navigate around, and especially with projects, as to kind of what system will work best in that instance, and also how much of the kind of benefit the environment, like you say, the wetlands, reusing the rainwater as much as possible, so there's less strain on the UK's waterworks as well. So I would say thank you, Lisa, because that certainly kind of opened my eyes to it. I mean, there is such a life outside Football Manager. There's real stuff on a day-to-day basis. But no, thank you. That was a really good explanation. And I think it's now time to look at our project recap for this week. So as always, with Stormwater School, we have a bunch of stormwater attenuation tank projects that we've recently installed over the past few weeks, and we have a few of them up on screen that we'd like to show you, of course. And I think the first one we have up is the University of Birmingham.
Yeah, this is right. So this is an area of the University of Birmingham campus called Pritchett's Park. It's an area that the university have had use of for a while and had some student accommodation on it, but they wanted to redevelop this area, to refurbish the existing student accommodation, build more, and also build a multi-storey car park for the students and staff. Who are using this area of the university. So there was significant new development. It was also again a development that they wanted to make carbon neutral. Environmental factors were a big consideration. And it involved 4 small attenuation tanks. Total volume is 412 metre cube across the 4. There was quite a severe slope on this site. So again, this was one that our technical had to be seriously involved in. Although the tanks themselves, were fine, square, rectangular, not challenging tanks in terms of install. There is quite a slope on this site. So even though some of the tanks were under landscaped areas, we had to still use a heavy duty crate system to cope with some of the, the ground pressures and lateral loadings and such. So it was a really good project to be involved in. We had to look at our product range and match it to a EcoBlock Max system, which is what we ended up using. And job went well. So very happy with the job.
Perfect. And next we have up is Neptune Wolf.
So Neptune Wolf is a new mixed use development. I think it was in London, this one. And this is a project, again, we used our EcoBlock Max, but what was kind of interesting about this project is it was initially specified as a completely different type of attenuation system. It was specified as large diameter pipework attenuation, a different brand, which kind of uses a large diameter pipe network of attenuation systems. So we had to completely redesign this one, into a crate system. I mean, it worked absolutely fine with crates, hence why we did this. And it tends to be a more cost-effective system as well. Crates and uses less space too. So customer was happy to, have a look at changing to a crate system. So that's what we did. So we redesigned these three large diameter pipe storage systems into 3 crate attenuation tanks. And we used the EcoBlock Max. And the job is in. We've actually only put, I believe, 1 of these tanks in. There is 3 tanks in total, but at the moment this is tank 1. And the other 2 tanks are scheduled to happen in a month or so's time. So again, we're working with the contractor, with their programs and such to, install when convenient for them.
Perfect. And then the next one we have is Canada Water. I believe the images I've chosen aren't the best with the bottom right one. A couple of tanks, I think.
It's another project which was new houses. This one was Max and Flex. So the system required integrated inspection chambers and an inspectable row of crates as well, going through just for maintenance. Again, where I think we really, this project really stands, as one of note, is that the design on this was very challenging. These tanks were extremely odd shaped, lots of internal corners to fit around, other amenities and services that were going to be in place. So we had to design these tanks, in a very odd shape as they were drawn. Also, the challenging shape meant that the design was changing frequently right up to the death. So again, our technical team were working incredibly hard. The contractor was constantly sending us new requirements, new things that they had discovered during the excavation, new things that had to be taken into consideration. So we were basically redesigning this tank, right up until the moment we put it in. So it was very challenging from that aspect, but of course the team excelled themselves. We found out in the end we found something that worked for the contractor with frequent changes that they were being asked to make, that we, could put in, and done a very good job. So it was a couple of tanks, total 218 metre cube, but in Max and Flex. But the big challenge with this one was the constant design changes. But again, the team just coped with that, no problem. So showed how flexible and diverse the team are when it comes to these tanks.
Perfect. And the next one we have is Barrington Way.
Yeah, so this is a project which is in Darlington in the northeast. It was new kind of mixed use industrial units, workspace units, mix of offices and kind of industrial units being built. It had to be heavy duty because obviously the businesses aren't there yet. It's still under construction, but these could be any kind of businesses that are going to use these industrial units. So it could potentially be big trucks in any industrial estate as well as can take big trucks. So we had to make sure that we were proposing something that was heavy duty, that would take these large loads. And so a Rookie Block Max system fit the bill. It was a 243 metre cube attenuation tank. Very straightforward install, completed in a couple of days. So, the team did a great job in this one.
Yeah, I think I'd just like to point out that in the second photo, no installers were harmed in the making of this attenuation tank. And
they passed away.
Although we didn't work them to death. I would like to point that out. That went on the job survived and they did make it home safely. We do actually.
Health and safety is massive consideration for all Graph UK installers, of course.
Yeah, so no one died in the making of this attenuation. Unfortunate signpost. And then the last one we have, I believe, Barncode Drive. Yeah,
so this is a small development, 22 metre cube attenuation, just for 3 new homes being built. Excuse me. So this one, though, is in Sutton Coldfield. Again, a Rookie Block Max system, and the guys completed this in less than a day, with it being a small tank. Sealed, fully guaranteed for 30 years, as all of our installations are. So just a really nice, straightforward little tank. These jobs, are great when they come in. Just really good design, really quick install, and everyone, all the customer and everything seemed very, very pleased with it. So it was a good job.
Very good. And yet another installation for a housing estate. I think they're very regular these days, and I do see them popping up quite often.
Absolutely.
Perfect. That is for the project. It's time for answering all the questions that have come in during today's live stream. So I believe we'll have some come up on screen. So the first one, can a stormwater tank be installed underneath a permeable paving area?
Yes, it can. That's something we see quite frequently, in design and for drainage drawings that we see. Permeable paving and gravel above the tanks forms part of the water quality element that we've spoke about before in SuDS. So when the water then filters through, rather than coming into the tank via pipes, if water comes into the tank via permeable paving and gravel layers, then this gravel will pick up potential pollutants. So the water going into the tank is cleaner, and will be then cleaner when it's discharged from the tank. So yes, that's something we see quite frequently, to help with the water quality and to combine the water quality and water quantity element of SuDS. So it just needs a slight change to the install. Obviously it means leaving the top of the attenuation tank. The ones we see in the photos there are all fully sealed across the top because that was the design that was approved. But that means wrapping the tank on the sides and the bottom basically, but leaving it open at the top and bringing the impermeable membrane up to the surface, underneath the area of the permeable paving, so that any water that falls within the area of the permeable paving system will be diverted into the permeable paving and filter through. And it also means you have to put a layer of on the top of the tank. There's a layer of permeable geotextile as well, so that the backfill doesn't migrate down into the crate. So you just don't put an impermeable membrane at the top. You put a permeable textile and you bring the membrane up to the surface. So, but yes, that's something we see very commonly.
Perfect. That answers that one. And then the next question we have: what is void ratio?
So void ratio is basically the volume of water that can be stored in the tank. Now, there's 2 types of volume. There's gross volume and net volume. So obviously, if you think, just as an example, if you have an attenuation crate that is 1 metre by 1 metre by 1 metre, that is the area or the volume of that space is 1 metre cube. But most attenuation crates for structural stability, and certainly all of ours, do have something in the middle. So I'm just going to grab a model to show you what I mean. So again, a model of a Rookie Block Max system. So, but an area inside the system is going to be taken up with plastic. So that essentially is area within that 1 metre cubed, as we use an example, which won't store water, because a percentage of that area will be taken up by the plastic. So void ratio is basically the percentage of empty space, therefore the percentage of water that can be held. So most crate systems are about 5% plastic on the inside. So for every 1 metre cubed of water, 1 metre cubed of space would hold 950 litres of water rather than 1,000 litres of water. So that's a 95% void ratio. Graphical Block Max holds 96% void ratio, so we can hold 960 litres of water for every metre cube of space. Our flex and light systems actually can go up to 97 depending on circumstances. So very, very good void ratio, which can help massively in the design of tanks. I mean, if it's a little 20 cube tank, that's not going to make a massive difference. But if you have a tank which is designed at a 95% void ratio, which is 1,000 cube or 1,500 cube, because of our improved void ratio, we can actually shave quite a bit. We can hold the same litre of water in less space and less crates, which is obviously a cost saving, excavation saving. But there are a lot of positive elements to these higher void ratios. So void ratio is basically the volume of water that can be held. So gross volume is the area in terms of basic length by width by height. Void ratio is the actual amount of water that can be stored in that space.
Perfect. I think that explains that incredibly well. And then the next question we have, what testing has been carried out on our crates?
I mean, so many tests. There's actually pages and pages of testing that needs to be done. The main ones that I think refer to is we have carried out tests up to SuDS guidelines. SuDS is kind of the SuDS manual. As we're SuDS, who write the SuDS manual, it's guidance for sustainable urban drainage systems. So we test in accordance with SuDS guidelines by independent test facilities. We test short-term compressive strength, and we test long-term creep. And long-term creep is basically, obviously, the amount that these tanks were affected over their life to make sure that we design all of our tanks with an excess of 50-year design life. So long-term creep tests are carried out over about 10,000 hours to make sure that, we're very confident in the results that they're done by independent test facilities. So compression and creep are two of the main tests, which probably, the viewers would have heard of. But we test up to SuDS guidelines, and we also have full BBA approval on our eco-block range, the majority of our eco-block range. So we're also testing up to BBA standards as well, and that is independently verified by the British Board of Agriculture. So we can be confident that our crates do what they say they will do.
Perfect. That answer. And then the next question we have in, can you access the stormwater tank, and if so, how?
Yes, if you design the tank with access is the answer to that. So again, we have a system called EcoBlock Flex Inspect, which has a crate system which has which has channels down the middle to allow for access. It can be combined with our Max system, or it can be put in just as EcoBlock Flex Inspect, which means that the tank is accessible. And you would do this by either installing integrated access chambers into the tank. We call them vario shafts. So basically manholes within the tank. Rather than being outside the tank, you put a mini manhole inside the tank to instantly access these inspection channels and drainage channels. You can also buy external inspection chambers if you would rather. Some people just want the row of inspectable crates, but would rather access it either via one of the manholes that's already there or put in an external inspection manhole. This obviously means though extra covers and things on, extra excavation and extra manholes to fit on site. So, but it depends certainly on the design. They are not suitable for man entry. The covers and the access chamber are not big enough to actually send people into the tank for maintenance, but they are big enough for, jetting, CCTV inspection, etc. And for most regular maintenance, you would need for a stormwater tank.
Perfect. I think that answers that. And I think that's all the questions that have come in. Yep, we've got the wave from our control desk to say that is the case. But thank you, Lisa, for taking part and joining us for the Stormwater School. Your incredible knowledge on stormwater management is always as helpful as ever. So thank you, Lisa, for taking part.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
No worries. And thank you for everyone that tuned in today to watch the Stormwater School Live. And we'll be back next week for a rainwater research session. So put that in the calendar and make sure you bookmark that to come see us then. But other than that, have a wonderful week, and we'll see you on the next one.
No problem. Thanks all. Bye.